When Holden Baxter found the girl talking to his dead wife's grave at midnight, he should have sent her packing. Instead, he invited her home. The Wyoming wind carried secrets that October night, whispering through the cottonwoods like voices from another world. Holden Baxter pulled his worn coat tighter as he approached the small cemetery behind his ranch house, drawn by a sound that made his heart stutter. Soft conversation drifting from beside the white marble headstone that read, "Beloved wife and mother, Thea Harmon Baxter." A young woman knelt there in the moonlight, her dark hair spilling over shoulders draped in a patched traveling dress. She spoke in hushed tones, as if sharing confidences with an old friend, her breath forming silver clouds in the crisp air. "I know you're worried about him," she murmured to the grave. "A man shouldn't carry such loneliness. It's written in every line of his face, every careful step he takes around your memory. And the child, oh, Thea, she's growing up wild as prairie grass, all thorns and hidden blooms." Holden's boots crunched on frost-brittle grass, each step deliberate as he approached this impossible scene. The girl, no, woman, he corrected himself as she turned, looked up with eyes the color of storm clouds. No fear flickered there, only a strange, gentle knowing that unsettled him more than tears would have. "You must be Holden." She rose gracefully, brushing dirt from her skirts with hands that trembled slightly from cold, not nervousness. "Thea's told me so much about you. How you still sleep on your side of the bed. How you make her favorite cornbread every Sunday though it tastes like sawdust without her laughter to season it." The words should have sounded mad. Instead, they hit him, like a physical blow, stealing the anger he'd summoned. In the 3 years since consumption had claimed his wife, no one had spoken Thea's name with such easy familiarity, such intimate knowledge of his private rituals of grief. "Who in blazes are you?" His voice came out rougher than intended, edged, with the desperation of a man whose carefully guarded wounds had been laid bare. "Anna East Covington." She extended a gloved hand, steady despite the cold. "I was traveling through when my horse went lame about 5 miles south. Your neighbor, Mrs. Shaw, said you might have work for someone willing to earn their keep. She also mentioned you've been struggling to manage both ranch and child since." She gestured delicately toward the headstone. Holden studied her face in the silver light, noting the aristocratic cheekbones, the cultured accent that spoke of Eastern schools and drawing rooms. She couldn't be more than 25, with delicate features that had never known a day's hard labor, not the weathered hands of someone accustomed to ranch work. Yet something in her bearing suggested steel beneath the silk, a core of strength forged by her own trials. "Mrs. Shaw's got a tongue that wags faster than a dog's tail," he said, his weathered hands working nervously at his coat buttons. "What kind of work you figure a lady like yourself can do on a working ranch? I can cook more than beans and hardtack, clean without breaking the good china, and mend everything from torn breeches to broken hearts." She paused, her gaze returning to the headstone with something approaching reverence. "And I can listen to what the living need to say about the dead without judgment or fear." The admission hung between them like morning mist. Holden's practical mind, the part that calculated feed costs and weather patterns, rejected such nonsense. But his grief-hollowed heart stirred with something dangerously close to hope. For 3 years, he'd carried conversations meant for Thea like stones in his chest, words that had nowhere to go but deeper into silence. "My daughter don't need any spiritualist nonsense filling her head," he said, but the protest lacked conviction. Phoenix, barely 8 when her mother died, had grown strange and solitary in the years since. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from nightmares that left her calling for a mother who would never answer. She spoke to shadows, hoarded her mother's belongings like talismans, and flinched whenever anyone mentioned Thea's name. "She talks to her mama, too," Anais said softly, reading his thoughts with unnerving accuracy. "Every night before sleep. Every morning when she thinks no one's listening. But she's afraid you'll think her touched in the head if you catch her at it. So she whispers to the wind and hopes it carries her words to heaven." How could this stranger know what Holden had only suspected? He'd sometimes heard Phoenix's whispered conversations through her bedroom door, but had never found the courage to interrupt such private sorrow, afraid that acknowledging it might somehow make it worse. "You claiming to speak with spirits?" The question emerged more curious than accusatory. tinged with the desperate hope of a man who would bargain with the devil for one more conversation with his beloved. I'm claiming to understand loss. Anais pulled her shawl closer, the gesture somehow managing to be both vulnerable and dignified. My own husband died 2 winters past. Typhoid fever took him faster than spring melts snow. I know how the living cling to any thread that connects them to those they've lost. Whether the dead truly speak matters less than the comfort it brings to believe they still listen. A coyote called from the hills, its voice lonely as winter wind. Holden found himself studying this woman who'd appeared like an answer to prayers he'd been too proud to voice. His ranch hands were decent men, but rough company for a growing girl. Phoenix needed feminine guidance, someone to braid her hair and teach her the gentle arts her mother would have shared. Someone who wouldn't flinch at a child's need to speak to ghosts. I got a spare room, he heard himself say, the words emerging without conscious decision. Meals and modest wages for honest work. But I won't abide any seance foolishness or carnival tricks. This is a God-fearing household. Anais smiled, transforming her solemn features into something luminous. I wouldn't dream of it. Some conversations are too sacred for an audience, too precious for performance. As they walked toward the ranch house, its windows glowing amber against the darkness, Holden felt the familiar weight of solitude lift slightly from his shoulders. Perhaps it was the approaching winter making him sentimental, or the way Anais moved with Thea's same sure grace across familiar ground. Whatever force had brought her to his doorstep, he sensed his ordered world was about to change in ways he couldn't foresee. Behind them, the wind sighed through the cemetery grass, carrying what might have been whispered approval or warning. The next morning would bring the first test of this fragile arrangement. When Phoenix discovered a stranger had claimed her mother's territory, dawn broke over the Baxter Ranch like spilled honey, golden light pooling in the valleys between rolling hills. Holden had barely slept, his mind churning with second thoughts about the mysterious woman now occupying Thea's old sewing room. He'd risen before cockcrow to tend the horses, hoping physical labor might quiet his restless thoughts. The sound of Phoenix's bare feet on hardwood floors drifted from the house, his daughter's morning ritual of checking every room, as if ensuring the familiar boundaries of her world remained intact. At 11, she moved through their home like a careful guardian, straightening curtains Thea had sewn, dusting photographs with reverent fingers, maintaining the shrine of their shared grief. Papa, her voice carried across the yard, thin with confusion. There's a lady in Mama's room. Holden set down his pitchfork and turned toward the house, where Phoenix stood framed in the doorway. Her auburn hair, so like Thea's, hung in tangles around a face pale with shock. She wore her mother's old nightgown, altered to fit her small frame, but still trailing around her ankles like a ghost shroud. Her name's Miss Covington, he said, crossing the yard with measured steps. She'll be helping around the house for a spell, but that's Mama's room. Phoenix's voice cracked on the words. Nobody sleeps in Mama's room. From inside came the soft sounds of someone moving about, water splashing in the wash basin, the whisper of fabric. Anais emerged onto the porch, fully dressed despite the early hour, her dark hair pinned in a simple knot that somehow managed to look elegant. She'd changed from her traveling dress into a practical gray wool skirt and white shirtwaist that suggested she'd come prepared for work. Good morning, Phoenix. Anais descended the steps with careful grace, neither rushing toward the child nor retreating from her obvious hostility. I'm Anais. Your father was kind enough to offer me shelter. Phoenix stepped closer to Holden, her thin body pressed against his leg like a territorial animal protecting its den. That's my mama's room, she repeated, her chin jutting with stubborn determination. I know. Anais knelt to bring herself to Phoenix's eye level, her storm gray gaze gentle but direct. I asked her permission before I settled in. She said she didn't mind sharing, especially if it meant someone would be here to help take care of you and your papa. The child's eyes went wide, shock replacing defiance. You talked to Mama? Phoenix. Holden's warning carried the weight of 3 years worth of protective instincts. He'd watched his daughter retreat further into fantasy with each passing season, and the last thing she needed was encouragement from a stranger with dubious claims. But Anais held up a gentle hand, never breaking eye contact with Phoenix. Your Mama told me you like to visit her in the evenings. when the stars are bright enough to carry whispers to heaven. She said you tell her about school, about the wild horses you watch from the ridge, about how much you miss braiding her hair. Phoenix's breath caught in a small gasp. These were secrets she'd shared with no one. Conversations held in the privacy of darkness when grief felt safe enough to voice. She really talks to you. In her way. Anais rose slowly, smoothing her skirts. She worries about you, you know? Says you're growing up too fast, taking care of everyone but yourself. She thinks you might like having another woman around to talk to, someone who remembers what it's like to be 11 and caught between being a little girl and something more. Holden watched this exchange with growing unease. Whether Anais was a gifted guesser or something more, she was weaving herself into Phoenix's starved need for maternal connection with dangerous skill. His daughter hadn't shown this much animation in months. Did she say anything else? Phoenix ventured, edging closer despite herself. She mentioned you have her gift with animals, that you can gentle the wildest horse with patience and understanding. And she's proud of how you've been helping your papa, even when it means putting aside your own childhood. Phoenix glanced up at Holden, uncertainty flickering across her features. For 3 years, he'd been the sole guardian of her world, protector, against anything that might disturb their careful routine of survival. Now this stranger was offering what he couldn't, a bridge to the mother she desperately missed. I suppose, Phoenix said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, if Mama said it was all right. Relief and apprehension warred in Holden's chest. He recognized the hunger in his daughter's eyes, the desperate need to believe her mother's love transcended death. Whether Anais was genuine mystic or skilled manipulator, she was offering Phoenix something precious. The illusion that grief might have an end, that love could survive even the grave. Why don't you help Miss Covington with breakfast? He suggested, his voice carefully neutral. Show her where everything is. Phoenix nodded eagerly, the first spark of enthusiasm she'd shown in weeks. As the two figures disappeared into the house, one small and eager, the other gracefully accommodating, Holden remained on the porch, wrestling with doubt. Through the kitchen window, he could see Anais moving with surprising competence, her hands finding utensils and ingredients with minimal guidance from Phoenix. She worked with quiet efficiency, asking questions that drew his daughter into conversation about school, friends, favorite foods. For the first time in memory, Phoenix giggled, a sound so unexpected it made Holden's chest tighten with equal parts joy and fear. Whatever game Anais was playing, Phoenix was already too invested to retreat. The woman had found the key to his daughter's locked heart and turned it with frightening ease. As the scent of bacon and fresh biscuits began to drift from the kitchen, Holden wondered if he'd welcomed salvation or destruction into his home. The distant sound of approaching horses broke his reverie. 3 riders crested the hill, his foreman Gideon Rowe and 2 of the ranch hands, early for the day's work. Their faces carried the grim set of men bearing bad news. Morning, Holden, Gideon called, reining in his mount. We got trouble brewing. That snake Malachi Shaw's been sniffing around the south pasture again, asking questions about your water rights. Word is he's got lawyers coming down from Cheyenne next week. Holden's jaw tightened. Shaw had been coveting the Baxter Ranch since Thea's death, sensing weakness in a widowed man struggling to raise a child alone. Now, with winter approaching and cattle prices dropping, the pressure was mounting from all sides. But as the aroma of a proper breakfast drifted from his kitchen for the first time in years, Holden wondered if his mysterious houseguest might prove to be either his salvation or the final catalyst in losing everything he'd fought to preserve. The lawyers arrived on a Tuesday morning when frost still clung to the grass like scattered diamonds. Holden watched from his porch as 3 black-suited men climbed down from their fancy carriage, their city boots already collecting Wyoming dust. Behind them rode Malachi Shaw on his prized stallion, his silver hair gleaming beneath a hat that cost more than most men earned in a month. Baxter, Shaw's voice carried across the yard with false joviality. Hope you don't mind the early visit. These gentlemen from Cheyenne had some questions about property boundaries. Holden descended the steps slowly, his hand resting on the colt. At his hip, not a threat, but a reminder that this was still his land. My property lines haven't changed since my grandfather's time, Shaw. Nothing to question. The lead lawyer, a thin man with spectacles that caught the morning light, unrolled a sheaf of papers. "Mr. Baxter, I'm Jefferson Wyatt of Wyatt, Coleman and Associates. We're here regarding a disputed water rights claim filed by Mr. Shaw. It seems there's some confusion about the creek running through both properties." "No confusion on my end." Holden's voice remained steady, but his gut churned. Water rights were the lifeblood of any ranch, and Shaw knew it. That creek's been Baxter water for 3 generations. From the house came the soft sound of the door opening. Anais stepped onto the porch, carrying a tray of coffee cups with the easy grace she brought to every task. She'd been living with them for 2 weeks now, and her presence had transformed more than just their meals. Phoenix smiled again. The house stayed clean without effort, and somehow the burden of daily survival felt lighter. "Gentlemen," she said, her cultured voice cutting through the tension like silk through steel. "Perhaps you'd care for some refreshment? It's quite early for such serious business." Shaw's eyes fixed on her with predatory interest. "Well now, Holden, you didn't mention you'd taken a wife." "Miss Covington is our housekeeper," Holden replied tersely, not missing the way Shaw's gaze lingered on Anais with uncomfortable familiarity. "Covington." Shaw's brow furrowed as if trying to place the name. "From back east, I'd wager. You have that refined look about you, miss. Quite a change from ranch life, I imagine." Anais set the tray on the porch railing, her movements deliberate. "I find frontier life suits me, Mr. Shaw. There's something honest about land that demands respect rather than manipulation." The barb struck home. Shaw's genial mask slipped for an instant, revealing something harder beneath. "Indeed, though I've found that respect must be earned through proper legal channels. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Wyatt?" The lawyer cleared his throat importantly. "Mr. Baxter, the survey records from 1847 show some irregularities in the original creek designation. Mr. Shaw has documentation suggesting his grandfather's claim predates yours by several months." "That's impossible." Holden's voice sharpened. "My grandfather built this ranch in 1845. I've got the deed papers to prove it." "Papers can be misinterpreted," Shaw said smoothly. "Especially old ones, damaged by time and weather. Perhaps we could examine your documents?" "For clarification, of course." Before Holden could respond, Anais spoke up. "How fascinating. And I suppose your client's papers have suffered no such damage, Mr. Wyatt? How convenient that only Mr. Baxter's documentation seems questionable." The lawyer's face flushed. "Madam, this is a legal matter. Indeed it is." Anais moved to stand beside Holden, her presence somehow making him feel less alone against these circling wolves. "I'm curious, when exactly did Mr. Shaw discover these alleged irregularities? Before or after he began making offers to purchase Mr. Baxter's land?" Shaw's horse sidled nervously, responding to its rider's tension. "Miss Covington, isn't it? You seem remarkably well informed for someone who's been here such a short time." Something flickered in Anais's eyes, a shadow of wariness that Holden had never seen before. "I find legal matters fascinating, Mr. Shaw, particularly when they involve families trying to build honest lives." "Families, yes." Shaw's smile turned predatory. "Tell me, miss, what brought you to our little corner of Wyoming? Surely a woman of your obvious breeding has better prospects than keeping house for a struggling rancher." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Holden sensed undercurrents he didn't understand, some unspoken recognition passing between Shaw and Anais. Her face had gone pale beneath her carefully composed expression. "I go where I'm needed," she said finally. "And right now, I'm needed here." "How noble." Shaw gathered his reins. "Well, gentlemen, I believe we've accomplished what we came for. Mr. Baxter, you have 1 week to produce clear documentation of your water rights. Otherwise, we'll be forced to file an injunction preventing you from accessing the creek until the matter is resolved." "You can't," Holden began, but Shaw was already turning his horse. "1 week, Baxter. I'd hate to see your cattle go thirsty." He tipped his hat mockingly toward Anais. "Miss Covington, I do hope we'll have occasion to speak again soon. I have a feeling we have much to discuss." As the carriage disappeared in a cloud of dust, Holden turned to find Anais gripping the porch railing, her knuckles white with tension. "You know him," he said. It wasn't a question. "I know his type." But her voice lacked its usual steadiness. "Men who take what they want and call it justice." From inside the house came Phoenix's voice, raised in distress. Papa, something's wrong with Biscuit. They found Phoenix in the barn, cradling the old barn cat who'd been her constant companion since childhood. The animal lay limp in her arms, its breathing shallow and labored. He was fine this morning, Phoenix sobbed. I gave him milk like always, and now he won't wake up proper. Anais knelt beside them, her hands gentle as she examined the cat. Her face darkened as she lifted its lip to check the gums. This isn't sickness, Phoenix. Someone poisoned him. What? Holden's blood ran cold. The symptoms: sluggish breathing, pale gums, the sweet smell on his breath. It's oleander extract, tasteless in milk, but deadly in small doses. Anais's voice carried grim certainty. Someone wanted to send a message. Phoenix's wails echoed through the barn as Biscuit drew his final breath. Through the doorway, Holden could see Shaw's dust cloud still visible on the horizon, and a terrible understanding began to dawn. The water rights were just the beginning. Shaw was playing a deeper game, one that included threats against everything Holden held dear. But as Anais rose from the cat's still form, her face set with cold determination, Holden realized his mysterious housekeeper might be harboring secrets that could either save them all or destroy what little remained of his world. That night, Phoenix refused to leave Biscuit's grave. She sat beside the small mound of earth behind the barn, her thin shoulders shaking with silent sobs that tore at Holden's heart worse than any screaming fit. He'd tried coaxing her inside with promises of hot chocolate and stories, but she remained unmoved, a small sentinel guarding another piece of her shrinking world. She blames herself, Anais said softly, appearing beside him with a heavy quilt draped over her arm. Children always do when something innocent dies on their watch. It ain't her fault Shaw's a snake. Holden's voice carried 3 years' worth of helpless rage. But I can't prove he did it. And even if I could, what judge would take the word of a rancher against the town's richest man? Anais walked to where Phoenix sat hunched in the moonlight. Without a word, she wrapped the quilt around the child's shoulders and settled beside her on the cold ground. For long minutes, they sat in silence while Holden watched from the shadows, afraid to intrude on grief that felt too raw for his clumsy comfort. Your mama's here, Anais finally whispered. She says Biscuit's with her now, chasing the mice that nibble at heaven's grain stores. Phoenix looked up, tears silvering her cheeks. Really? Really? She also says she's proud of how you loved him, even when it hurt. That's what makes love real. Choosing it even when it might break your heart. I don't want to love anything else, Phoenix choked out. Everything I love goes away. Anais pulled the child closer, her voice gentle but firm. Your mama says that's not living, sweetheart. That's just surviving. And she didn't fight so hard to bring you into this world just so you could hide from it. From his position by the barn, Holden felt something crack open in his chest. For 3 years, he'd been teaching Phoenix exactly that lesson: how to survive by loving less, feeling less, risking less. He'd thought he was protecting her, but maybe he'd been crippling them both. She's got something else to say, Anais continued, her gaze lifting to meet Holden's through the darkness. About the papers Mr. Shaw claims don't exist. Phoenix straightened. What papers? The ones that prove this ranch belongs to your family. Your mama says they're hidden where only someone who truly loved her would think to look. Holden stepped forward, his pulse quickening. Anais, what are you? The music box, she said, her voice carrying absolute certainty. The one on your dresser that plays Beautiful Dreamer. Thea says you gave it to her for your first anniversary, but it's more than a keepsake. She hollowed out the base and hid the original survey documents there, along with your grandfather's letters to the territorial governor. She was afraid of fire, you see, afraid the house might burn and take your legacy with it. The world seemed to tilt beneath Holden's feet. Thea's music box had sat untouched on their dresser for 3 years, too precious to move, too painful to wind. He'd never thought to examine it closely, never noticed if it felt heavier than it should. How could you possibly know that? He breathed. Anais rose gracefully, Phoenix still wrapped in her protective embrace. Because some secrets are too important to stay buried. And because your wife loves you too much to let Shaw steal what your family built with blood and sweat. They walked to the house in silence, Phoenix clinging to Anais like a lifeline while Holden's mind reeled with possibilities. In their bedroom, his bedroom now, though he still thought of it as theirs. The music box sat exactly where Thea had placed it that last morning, its polished wood gleaming in the lamplight. His hands trembled as he lifted it, surprised by the weight. The familiar melody tinkled out as he wound the key, filling the room with bittersweet memory. But when he turned it over, his breath caught. The felt bottom showed signs of careful removal and replacement, so subtle he'd never noticed. Working with gentle fingers, he peeled back the felt to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside lay a roll of documents wrapped in oilcloth, along with a folded letter in Thea's careful handwriting. "My dearest love," he read aloud, his voice breaking. "If you're reading this, then our worst fears have come to pass, and someone is trying to steal what we've built together. These papers are the proof you'll need. Grandfather Josiah's original claim, signed by the territorial governor himself, and the survey that clearly shows Shaw's grandfather never owned the creek at all. He tried to file a false claim in 1847, but Josiah caught him and had it struck down. The records are in the courthouse basement, if Shaw hasn't destroyed them. Fight for our land, my darling. Fight for Phoenix's future. And when the battle's won, remember that love doesn't die. It just changes form. Your devoted wife, Thea." Phoenix pressed close to his side, staring at the documents with wide eyes. "Mama really left these for us." "She did, little bird." Holden's voice was thick with wonder and grief in equal measure. "She always was the smartest woman in 3 counties." Anais stood apart from their reunion, her face soft with satisfaction but shadowed by something deeper, a sadness that seemed to have nothing to do with their discovery. "How did you know?" Holden asked again, studying her carefully. "Don't tell me you guessed, or that Thea's ghost whispered it in your ear." Nobody could guess something that specific. For a long moment, Anais was silent. Then she sank into Thea's old rocking chair, her composure finally cracking. "Because I helped her hide them," she whispered. "The summer before she died, when Shaw first started sniffing around your property. I was here before, Holden, under a different name, working as a seamstress in town. Thea and I became friends, and when she got sick, she was terrified. Shaw would move against you while you were distracted by her illness." The revelation hit him like a physical blow. "You knew my wife?" "I held her hand when the coughing got so bad she couldn't sleep. I promised her that if anything happened, I'd find a way to protect you in Phoenix. When I heard Shaw was making his move, I came back to keep that promise." Phoenix looked between them, confusion clear on her young face. "So you really did talk to Mama?" Anais smiled through her tears. "In a way, sweetheart. Love makes its own kind of magic, and promises between friends don't die easy." But as Holden stared at the woman who'd risked everything to honor a dying friend's wish, he realized their troubles were far from over, and that Shaw's next move might be more dangerous than any of them imagined. The courthouse in Cheyenne buzzed with tension as Holden laid Thea's hidden documents before Judge Marcus Whitmore. Shaw's lawyers had arrived in force, their confident smirks fading as the original territorial survey unrolled across the mahogany table. The creek's true boundaries were marked in faded ink, clearly showing that Shaw's grandfather had never held legitimate claim to the water that fed both properties. "These documents appear authentic," Judge Whitmore declared after careful examination. "Mr. Shaw, your claim is hereby dismissed. The water rights remain with the Baxter family as originally granted." Shaw's face darkened to the color of thunderclouds. "This isn't over, Baxter. You think some old papers can protect you from what's coming?" "That sounds remarkably like a threat, Mr. Shaw," Anais said from her seat behind Holden, her voice carrying a steel edge that made several lawyers glance her way. "How unfortunate that you'd make it in front of witnesses." As they left the courthouse, Holden felt lighter than he had in years. The ranch was safe, Phoenix's inheritance secured, and for the first time since Thea's death, the future held promise instead of just survival. But Anais walked beside them in unusual silence, her face pale with an exhaustion that seemed to go deeper than the day's victory. That evening, as Phoenix helped prepare a celebration dinner, Holden found her standing in Thea's garden, now flourishing under her careful tending, staring at the roses that had begun to bloom despite the approaching winter. "You're leaving," he said. It wasn't a question. "My promise is kept." She touched a late-blooming rose with gentle fingers. "Thea's family is safe. The ranch is secure." There's nothing more for me to do here. Nothing more. The words came out rougher than he intended. Phoenix needs you. Hell, I need you. These past weeks, you've brought life back to this place. Anais turned, and in the golden evening light, he saw tears tracking down her cheeks. Don't you understand, Holden? I can't stay because I'm falling in love with you. And that wasn't part of the promise I made. The admission hung between them like morning mist. Holden stepped closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. What if I told you I'm falling in love with you too? Then I'd say you're betraying the memory of the most wonderful woman I ever knew. Her voice broke on the words. Thea loved you with her whole heart. She died trusting that love would be enough to sustain you and Phoenix. I can't take her place. I'm not asking you to. Holden reached for her hands, calloused from weeks of honest work. Thea's gone, Anais. She'll always be part of who I am, but I can't live in a shrine to her memory forever. And neither can Phoenix. As if summoned by her name, Phoenix appeared in the garden doorway. She'd been quieter than usual since the courthouse. Victory, and now Holden saw why. The child had been listening, understanding more than either adult had credited. Mama wouldn't want you to leave, Phoenix said, walking to Anais with the determined stride of someone who'd already lost too much. She told me so. Sweetheart, Anais began. She visits me sometimes, when I'm real quiet and the moon's just right. Not like you pretending to hear her, but really visits. She says love don't run out just because you use it on somebody new. Phoenix's voice carried the wisdom of a child who'd grown up too fast. She says Papa's heart is big enough for both of you, and she's tired of watching him be sad all the time. Holden knelt beside his daughter, amazed by her strength. Is that what you want, little bird? For Anais to stay? I want us to be a family. Again, Phoenix whispered. A different family than before, but still a real one. And I want to stop being scared that everyone I love is going to disappear. Anais sank to her knees, pulling Phoenix into her arms. Oh, sweetheart, I'm scared too. I lost my husband, remember? I know how much it hurts when love ends. But this, love don't have to end, Phoenix said with simple certainty. Not if we don't let it. That night, as autumn wind whispered through the cottonwoods, Holden found Anais by Thea's grave. She knelt in the moonlight just as she had that first night. But now her words carried the weight of resolution rather than introduction. I don't know if you can really hear me, she murmured to the marble headstone. But I need you to know, I never meant for this to happen. I came here to honor my promise, not to steal your place. Holden approached quietly, his boots soft on the frost-crisp grass. She knows, he said. Wherever she is, Thea knows you've given us back the gift of believing in tomorrow. Anais looked up, her face luminous in the silver light. How can you be sure? Because of this. He gestured toward the garden where roses still bloomed despite the season's turn. Because Phoenix laughs again. Because I wake up looking forward to the day instead of just enduring it. That's not betrayal. That's the kind of miracle Thea always believed in. 6 months later, as spring painted the Wyoming hills in shades of green and gold, the small church in town overflowed with friends and neighbors come to witness the wedding of Holden Baxter and Anais Covington. Phoenix stood beside the altar, in a dress of sky-blue silk, her face radiant as she watched her father promise to love and cherish the woman who'd taught them both that hearts could heal without forgetting that they exchanged vows. A breeze stirred through the open windows, carrying the scent of blooming roses from Thea's garden. Some said it was just the wind. Others, more inclined toward mystery, whispered that love leaves its own kind of blessing on those brave enough to choose it twice. That evening, as the celebration wound down and the last guests departed, Holden and Anais stood on their porch watching Phoenix chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. The child's laughter rang across the valley like music, pure and joyful and utterly alive. Thank you, Holden said quietly, his arm around his new wife's waist. For keeping your promise. For staying. For showing us that love multiplies instead of divides. Anais leaned into his embrace, her heart full to overflowing. Thank you for teaching me that some promises lead to places we never expected to go. In the distance, a nightingale began to sing, its melody weaving through the cottonwoods like a benediction. And in the small cemetery behind the house, roses bloomed eternal on a grave tended by love that knew no ending. Well now, if that don't. Warm your heart like a campfire on a cold night. I don't know what will. If this tale of love finding its way home touched your spirit, be sure to give it a like and share it with folks who still believe in second chances. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the frontier, where hearts are as wide as the sky and love runs deeper than any well. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from today. We love hearing from kindred spirits all across this great wide world.